And so I think that comes into play where it's the economic side of things and it's the access to very, very skilled talent that may be in a business that's 3, 4, 5 times size bigger than you. That person can bring in outside knowledge and inject it into your business, almost like a little bit of rocket fuel.
It's quite funny. The war for talent seems to like never be won, right? And that war for talent just gets harder. I create clear thinking and decisive leaders who can amplify their influence. Contact me to find out how I can help you or your organisation. And today, our guest is Benjamin Morone. How are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful, Judith. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Ben, do you have like a favourite film?
Favorite film?
Mm.
I would probably say Inception is up there. The one with Leonardo DiCaprio and Tom Hardy and Joseph Gordon-Levitt, where they're going through like the different dream states, or maybe Shutter Island, because that one's kind of a thriller and a psychological film.
Brilliant, Ben. Why do you like Inception?
Because I've watched it maybe 4 or 5 times, and I feel like every time I watch it, I understand more of the plot. And
Wow.
so typically with movies, you watch them once and then you're like, well, I know what happens at the end. So you may not watch it again. Or if you
Yeah.
do watch it again, you don't really pay that much attention. And so with Inception, I find myself paying attention each time because I understand it more as the time goes on. Yeah, with each subsequent watch.
It's a great concept too, isn't it?
Yeah.
So tell me a bit more about you.
Yeah. So I'm originally from Montana in the United States. 2 years ago, I moved to Warsaw, Poland, where I'm based here, doing recruitment of talent in Central, Eastern Europe, and then also Latin America for mainly US, UK-based companies, Canadian-based companies, and Dubai-based firms.
Okay. So Ben, you say you do recruitment. Do you use a lot of tech in your recruitment?
Yes, a ton of tech. I feel like every day I'm just in front of a computer screen finding new tech to use. So every day there's many different platforms that we use.
That's quite interesting because it's not something you necessarily think. There's a lot of tech in for recruitment. AI. Do you like use AI for sifting CVs, say?
So it's pretty interesting because I tried to build my own AI tool for sifting through some of the CVs,
Mm.
and we built different English tests and basically skill tests where they'd have to speak or introduce themselves on camera. And what we realized is the AI was very, very good at picking up what the person was trying to say, even if maybe their English wasn't as stellar, it was a little bit more broken. And so it rated everyone as like perfect English. And we couldn't really figure it out because AI has gotten so good. And so I don't really use AI for a lot of the sifting of the candidates, some of the intake of candidates, some of our back office work, definitely ChatGPT and Claude and these different large language learning models. Um, that's where you use AI the most would be inside of some of the back office reformatting, communications, those types of things. But the interesting thing was just with the skill vetting tool we were building, uh, I'm not sure if I really like AI vetting the candidates as much. I think it loses a little bit of a human element. And I know that there's AI like interviewing platforms and AI interviewers. And I just try to think of it from the candidate's point of view. Would I really want to show up to an interview where it's like maybe a generated AI asking me questions? It seems a little bit disingenuous.
Yeah, and also it's difficult for the neurodivergent too, isn't it? Because their IQs will be different,
Mm.
and their ability to even look at the camera could be
Yeah,
really hard. Um,
correct.
and then it gets read wrong, doesn't it?
Exactly. And so that's just why I try to stick away from some of the AI vetting tools and that type of stuff. Even though we tried to build our own in some aspect, I thought, instead of doing this, maybe we wait until it's, better and maybe unbiased um or just continue utilizing that human touch.
Hmm. Okay. So, in terms of global recruitment, what kind of trends or changes do you think are taking place now?
I mean, due to COVID in 22 or 2020 and 22, remote work has just been on the rise. If COVID hadn't happened and people weren't comfortable with working from home, I don't
Mm.
think that our business would be growing as much as it does. I think there'd still be a big barrier in people's minds about needing to come into the office, working with people on the other side of the globe or in different hemispheres. Um, and so I think with COVID coming in and this Zoom, this kind of remote type of workplace, that's really changed the landscape for remote work. And many people want remote jobs. They came out of COVID and they're like, I really liked being at home with my kids during the day or just being in my home office, being able to integrate with my family. And they felt maybe they were more productive. And there's a bunch of different studies and things that say, oh, they're less productive or, oh, they're more productive. Um, but the fact of the matter is the world keeps advancing towards more of that remote work. And so definitely even more rigid industries are opening their eyes or opening their mind to some of the remote work opportunities and remote employees.
Okay, so is there then jobs that are 100% remote still?
Correct. So we see a lot of sales rep roles that are 100% remote. So in the US, there's a lot of different maybe appointment setting roles, account executive roles that are remote. And then since we're hiring from Latin America, a lot of individuals like to fill those roles as well and work remote for that. Developers, IT, different type of development roles are very common that there's remote and there's outsourcing involved with it. Anything that really needs an in-office touch. If someone came to us and said, "Hey, let's do this role," but they needed to be in person, it just makes more sense to just keep it in person. There's some things maybe that are like executive assistants, um, or a certain role in a certain size of town or certain size of market that should probably be kept in-house and kept in person. But many roles can be taken remote.
Mm, okay then. Because everything that I'm seeing is people now sort of saying we want either fall back to work or we want 3 days in the office. And I thought that certainly America, for example, seems to be going full on that kind of everybody into the office. And I wonder if someone took a 100% remote job, how secure that job would be in terms of future trends.
Yeah, I think with the smaller businesses, they have a lot more ability to have the remote side of things and maybe
Right.
have some stability there. But larger companies, you see in New York, you see in Miami and in San Francisco, they're paying tens of thousands of dollars for office space, hundreds of thousands of dollars for office space, and so they want people in office. You see with Twitter, you see with Tesla, those types of things that when COVID was happening, they were mainly remote. But then as it kind of lessened up and we got over the hump of COVID, then it returned to being in office and those types of things. So I think it really depends on the size of the company that the person's going to work for. Smaller businesses can take advantage of a remote workforce because maybe there's someone on the other side of the world or in another town, another state, another province that has the skills that they need that they wouldn't have access to if they were only hiring in office, in-house.
Okay, so what makes people choose your business?
I think I think that it's a blend of a couple of different things. So, like I mentioned with the small businesses being able to get access to talent that they wouldn't normally have, I think that really comes into play, especially when they're trying to make it out of almost micro entrepreneurship or very small business when they're trying to make it past maybe these 50, 75K, 100K a month. They're trying to make it to that $1 million mark plus month. Um, Having the whole world to choose from for talent, being able to take advantage of talent being more financially or economic sensical in other locations can definitely help when you're a smaller business and things are maybe a little bit more unstable. And so I think that comes into play where it's the economic side of things and it's the access to very skilled talent that may be in a business that's 3, 4, 5 times size and bigger than you. That person can bring in outside knowledge and inject it into your business, almost like a little bit of rocket fuel. And of course, not sharing IP from the larger business and those types of things, but more just the way they think, the thought processes that they have, opening the eyes of the smaller business owner.
Thank you. With this whole idea, it's quite funny. The war for talent seems to like never be won, right? So I mean, I can't remember when that phrase came about, but it was 80s, early 90s. Like it's a long time ago, isn't it? And it's like we never seem to win that war for talent. It just gets harder. So
Yeah.
how, if you're a business out there and you're looking at you maybe you're not ready to have an in-house person, or maybe you want to move your business into more sleeker, kind of more flatter. So you want to go to look wider, like across the globe for people, and not maybe necessarily in the traditional, like the Philippines, India, China, that type of thing. How can you use technology to make that decision as to which country to go to, or even where, like even whether they should do that? Is there technology out there that can help with that decision?
Yeah, so there's a couple different ways that people can do this. On the research side and understanding what countries to hire from and the taxes, legality, all those different types of things. There's a couple different employer of record companies. So you have like a Deal or a Plane or Remote, and they have very, very extensive guides on what countries to hire from, depending on the different taxes, depending on some of the talent. And so those are good resources, and those are verified by legal teams. So those are good resources to understand what would be a solid country for me to choose from for this type of role, or just what makes financial sense for my business. Those are really, really good resources. As far as figuring out if you should hire, it depends on the size of the business and it depends on the role. But typically, if they're a newer entrepreneur and they're finding themselves just up to neck in work, right? They can do something called a time audit. And it's really auditing your time over 3 or 4 days, where you're writing down pretty much everything you're doing on a 15, 20-minute basis. Is pretty tedious, over that 3 or 4 days. But at the end of that period, you're going to be able to look back and see, okay, what are some tasks that I should eliminate, stop doing? What are some things I could possibly delegate? What are tasks that I should keep inside of my own skill set, because I'm really good at those tasks and I'm the only one that can do them in the business. This is kind of my swim lane. And when you divide the tasks up like that, and you look at the time that it takes you to complete those tasks, it gives you a little bit better of an estimate on, should I go hire for this role? Because the last thing that you want to do is enter the interview process, find some candidates, interview them, tell someone that they're going to have a happy home, happy work life at your company, and then not have that much work for them. Because then they're like, well, I could take on maybe another job, or this just isn't the right fit because I'm not utilizing my skills. And so you want to make sure that you have enough work, especially when you're in those smaller stages, to be able to sustain the talent and sustain the genius that's coming in.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense then. Okay, so I think you mentioned before that you help companies to get talent from Latin America and Eastern Europe.
Correct.
Why have you focused in those particular markets?
So Latin America was one of the second places that I had started sourcing talent. And it was mainly because I had a fair amount of clients on the Pacific coast in the United States. So when they're 8 hours, 9 hours behind talent in Central and Eastern Europe, they can create some delays. It's a little bit harder to recruit talent from Central and Eastern Europe if you're saying you got to work on LA time, right? And also what I noticed is for sales rep roles, different things where there's a lot of calling, having someone in Latin America can be very beneficial because there's that bilingual ability with the Spanish and the English. And so when you're calling in the south half of the US, there's tons of Spanish speakers in the United States. So it helps to have that kind of that ability. With Central and Eastern Europe, it was originally because in my company, we'd started doing a lot of development hires, some IT hires, and Ukraine, Poland, these regions have been outsourcing hubs for IT and development for years. And so we don't have any bias against any countries or for any countries. We've hired from 16 plus different countries. It's just, does it make sense numbers wise? Does it make sense culture wise? Does it make sense for this type of role? So we're always adding new countries to that list. We had a hire from Egypt last week. That was an interesting experience. He's very, very skilled. And now we're expanding more into Kenya, South Africa, Nigeria, these different places that have a lot of growth and a lot of access to internet. And so it's pretty interesting.
So do you think the driver then is the fact that they can operate it? They can operate in time zones that the actual where the firm is located is in. So therefore, that what the firm is actually doing is extending its working hours. Is that the benefit?
Correct. And so I have a mix of clients where they have team members in Latin America or South America who are working on that US time zone. But then they also have people in Central and Eastern Europe who are 6-7 hours ahead of them. So it's almost like the team in Europe is passing the baton as the Americans start their day. And so they can kind of get instead of it being a 9-hour working day, they could get 15 hours in their business, right? Because these people are working 6 in the morning, and then the LATAM team's taking over and the Americas waking up. So it's kind of a way to extend some of the hours around your business, be more productive. It really depends on what makes sense for the client and what they prefer, because there's some roles that, like an executive assistant, it's best to have that role as close to you on your time zone as possible, just because there's a lot of quick like schedule changes, maybe flight scheduling, those types of things, and having to stop and do the math real quick on the hours and the time zone changes, and maybe there's a daylight savings time in the States. It's like all that type of stuff. It's better to just have it very, very close within a couple of hours.
Makes sense. And I know that obviously with recruitment agencies, quite often there's like a guarantee, so if the person doesn't work out between this period of time, you get like 100%, return of your money, or 90%, or whatever it happens to be over the time period. When companies are recruiting outside of their time zones, for example, is it as stable as if they were recruiting inside their timetables, or is there a bigger risk that people will turn out not to be who they want?
That's a very good question. And I like that question a lot. I think with the stability, it depends more on the culture fit than anything else.
Yeah.
And the company that's doing the hiring. Because I've had clients come in where maybe they're not sure of their culture. They're not sure of where the company's growing. They're just kind of along for the ride. Like the CEO or the founder just kind of letting the company grow. And no matter where you hire from, those types of companies where the person's not really in control and their heart's not in it, they're going to struggle with talent, right? If they're hiring stateside, if they're hiring in their state or 12 hours across the globe, they're going to struggle with talent retention, onboarding, those types of things. And so I think it really depends a little bit more on the business themselves. And if they are comfortable with where they're going, they have set goals, they have a set culture. I think that's what's important with that.
Brilliant. Ben, thank you for coming on the show and sharing your insights.
Thank you so much for having me, Judith.
You're welcome. And thank you out there for tuning in to the Maverick Paradox podcast. I'm your host, Judith Germain, and I hope you've enjoyed today's conversation.
The Maverick Paradox. Judith Germain is an author, speaker, consultant, mentor, and trainer, and the leading authority on Maverick leadership. She is the founder of the Maverick Paradox, which supports organizations to enhance their leadership capabilities and to help business owners develop and grow their businesses. Judith enables individuals, business owners, and organizations to improve their impact and influence. She is also HR Zone's leadership columnist, and her expert opinion has appeared in national, international, and trade press.